Good people, welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your post-game hosts, Desmond. I am here with my partner, Dre. We've got Mark Rogers joining us later, as well as Steve Helwick to come and tell us about Colorado State. Before we get into it, please like and subscribe to the video. We are, I believe, 4,800 subscribers right now on the channel. We are pushing to try to beat Ohio State once again, but beat them as being the number one team channel on the Mark Rogers Network. Also subscribe to Mark's main channel, The Voice of College Football, and join his Discord so you can join the 24/7, 365 college football and NFL chat that is happening all the time. Thank you so much for joining us. Dre, how's it going, my friend?
It's going good. It's game week, baby.
It is game week. We have football tomorrow. We have college football tomorrow. And some big games and games that matter in the Big Ten race as well with Purdue and Penn State. But it's some good stuff going on, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is the dreaming part of the season, right? Where all possibilities are available to you, and
Not for Nebraska.
probably not for Nebraska anymore. I mean, well, that's a whole nother topic. But no, man, it's exciting, and there's really no time like it. The weather's right now is still beautiful, pretty much all around the country still. So you still can go outside and enjoy the game and enjoy tailgating without freezing your butt off.
That's the best time to watch college football. And
For sure.
we'll see what happens. I think we'll see, but the way things are looking right now, I may actually be tailgating at the Big House on Saturday. I've got some friends who have tickets. They're going into the game. Well, I won't be going to the game. We'll probably have our little puppy with us, but yeah, I may be there at Michigan Stadium, taking it all in, see what's going on, and see the passion that that the fan base has. It's the opening weekend. There's nothing quite like it. There's nothing quite like opening weekend.
Yeah, especially. I mean, look, I won't say that you have to have a really good program because there are passionate fan bases all across the country, and it's not always tied to the pedigree of the program. Some fan bases are just really, really passionate because they're the closest thing they have to a professional team in their area, or college football is one of those cult-like followings. Like it's an emotional attachment, so people tend to just be excited. I mean, I went to the only Division III homecoming I've ever been to was, your alma mater in Adrian College, and I was very impressed for a Division III school, just how much passion people had. So, that's an impact that college football has on people, and I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy yourself if you go Saturday.
It'll be a good time. It'll be a good time. Potentially hosting the Michigan football, Voice College Football post game from the Big House. I mean, we would. Oof, I'm trying to think. I think actually Greg from I don't know if that was on the Nebraska channel, but he was
Yeah.
literally in Dublin at the stadium hosting the post game. But I don't know if that was from the Nebraska channel. But that'd be pretty cool to be like, look, we're the first team channel to host a post game, and we'd have the first game. This is all just working out perfectly. We have the early game, so it's not as if one of the noon time slots could beat us if we had a 3 o'clock game or 3:30. We'll see, man. I mean, this could be. I don't want to say making history, but I would like to think that this would be, worst case, just pretty cool.
For sure, for sure. You'll have live boots on the ground for us and kind of give us the pulse of the people.
Give you a play-by-play of all the people like kind of coming out of the stadium. That'd be pretty interesting. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So Colorado, go ahead. Looks like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was just thinking, man, and it just literally just popped into my head. Like, let's say that this game, Colorado State, is like a 45 zip by like halftime, the third quarter. Do
Hmm.
you really think they're going to placate the entire game? Maybe JJ gets in later in the game.
Well, here's the thing that I would just want to see is if that does happen and you go 45-0 by half, then and you put and say you do bring in JJ in the second half, then I would want the same
Same
energy
thing for
next
Cade
week.
for
Yeah.
the next week.
That
Yeah.
that that's about the only thing I would say with it, but I mean, I don't know. If the game were 45-0 at half, what I would prefer is one of the guys who's not in the battle to come in. I think everybody will be fine, and I don't even want to bring it up, but just the potential of JJ, rolling an ankle, just literally anything, like it, you know what I mean? In a 45-0 game, I mean, you don't want to be looking like Gary Gaines with Boobie Miles, getting hurt out there, right? Like with a 35-0 lead. So
Yeah.
that would be what I would imagine, because it's not like JJ's not going to get his shot and his
Yeah,
reps,
no, it's just like at that point, like it's like, well, why not? Like just throw him out there. Cade's been ripping it. He's played an amazing game. I mean, and if it's, what more does Cade have? Like, why would Cade have to stay in that game?
Hmm.
Not to protect him, but it's just like this is like I don't know. Like, but then again, maybe it's just like, hey, this is your game fully, and you're gonna play it to the clock hits 0-0. So I don't know.
I would hope, in even next week as well. I would hope that if we've got 50-0, that your starting quarterback's not staying in that game. You know
Right,
what I mean, through halftime, because essentially all you're probably going to do anyway is hand the ball off a whole bunch.
right.
So it's not as if with your opportunity to win that QB job, like it's probably going to be done by halftime anyway if you're up that big. So I'd probably say get one of the younger guys, get one of the guys who's probably not going to win this battle, get them some reps, because JJ's got his time coming up next week. So when it comes to playing a cupcake, I think there's people in three different camps to me when it comes to being the better team in the cupcake matchup. Is there's going to be people who say, you should always play a difficult out of conference, at least one of the teams. There's going to be people on the other side of it say, I mean, I love playing a cupcake because it means we're going to win big. I get to see a bunch of guys from Michigan, on the field that I typically wouldn't see. And then there's people in the middle that just say, whatever is what it is. Where do you land in that grouping?
Um, I don't mind playing a cupcake for the first week, but I would ideally speaking, ideally I like to play a tougher opponent week two. I do think there is value in having a tougher opponent earlier in your schedule. Um, from a testing standpoint, it kind of gives you a gauge on where your team is, uh, how good they can really be, how good they are currently. What do they truly have to work on, right? And if you're special, if you're good enough, let's say even if you do drop one of those tougher games earlier, it does look terrible on your schedule, especially if you run a table the rest of the season. So, um, and definitely taking care of your conference and stuff like that. So, I think about case in point. If I'm not mistaken, I know Shea Patterson's first year. I want to say it was 2018.
Was that Notre
Uh,
Dame you had in that
it, it,
opening?
right. It was opening. That opening game was at Notre Dame, and I would have wished, ideally speaking, that we had that game week two. Maybe and maybe have had Shea in his debut play a cupcake, kind of get a rhythm with his receivers and stuff like that. It may be we would have been more prepared for that tougher opponent the second week of the season. So I definitely don't want a really tough opponent week one, but I do want a week two or week three earlier in the season for sure.
Yeah. To me, I think it depends. I think there's a lot that goes into it. I think it depends on where you're at as a program, right? Are you someone who coming into the season, it's looking like you're going to be one of the better teams in college football, top 15, let's just say. And if that's the case, I think you give yourself some leeway, some runway to have, an easier out of conference schedule, because I think, especially with Michigan, the conference itself is going to be pretty good. So it's like it's not as if you're not going to play anybody tough. And I do understand what you mean on, yeah, having that tough out of conference game will definitely test you to see exactly where you're at. Because after that game, no matter what, you've got something to build off of. Even if you win the game 28-20, you say, hey, like we see that we're able to overcome the adversity, but we still have a whole lot to clean up. And if you lose, it's almost the same message, right? It's like, all right, you lost, is what it is, kind of got to put it behind you. Here's the things we need to work on moving forward. But I think Michigan's got the benefit that you play in the second best conference, I think, in college football, and you're going to be tested. By the end of this season, we will know who Michigan is. So I'm not gonna go crazy on it. I this is going to be one of the very few years that this happens. Because the scheduling in college football overall is just changing. I mean, the fact that Alabama, who is the kings of neutral site, not doing a home and home, have about 7 or 8 home and home scheduled in the next 10 years, like that shows you how the change is coming of the schedules and things of that nature. So I'm not going to go crazy. I mean, Michigan had for a long time that one of their out of conference schedules and teams that they were going to play was Notre Dame. And that was a really difficult team to play. And you had them on the schedule just about every year. So, it give you some leeway, because on that end, it's like, man, well, we had to play Notre Dame every year. You had a stretch where you had to play Wisconsin seemingly every year when you're in your crossover game. So I think it's about balance. I think they had a stretch where it was a pretty difficult schedule, and now I think things are balancing out a little bit. But it definitely gives you the ability to have your quarterback decision play out in the way that it is. So, I mean, we talked on the phone, I think it was yesterday, but you admit, you mentioned, you said if you had, and I'm not even sure what school we brought as an example, but you basically said if you were playing a top 25 team week one, would you handle the QB decision this way? And my thought is you'd probably handle it the same way you handled last year. I mean, what do you think they would do? And I guess it's a hypothetical, but is what it is.
I don't know. I mean, 100%. I'm 100%. Transparent. I don't know. It's just that I don't know. You would think if it was a game with higher stakes that they would have gone with the safer option in K at least to start the season and to say, okay, this is our guy. But behind closed doors, like the competition is still going on, right? And JJ is close on Kate's heels. I don't know, because they wouldn't have had the leeway to do this type of thing, right? But then again, maybe Harbaugh does things his way, so maybe he would have kept doing what he did last year and probably brought JJ in for certain packages that they probably worked on, or maybe added a couple wrinkles over the offseason. So it's definitely very possible. It's just, I guess back to the whole like strength of schedule thing and playing cupcakes. I think the thing for me that I always worry about is if your first 2 games of the season are versus opponents that are so much below you in terms of their caliber and their talent and stuff like that, that when you play a team that may not be as good as you are, but they're significantly better than the teams you played, does that increase your chances of being shocked, maybe thrown off balance a little bit, right? And that game is a little bit more close than it should be. Now, case in point, there are certain programs that can play weak teams and can be prepared to play in high competition games. Case in point, Clemson. Clemson for years were playing a very weak ACC, but when it came time to the playoffs, they were ready to compete against Bama. They were ready to compete against Ohio State and win a lot of those games. It didn't matter that they had an easier schedule than the regular season because they were that good. So I don't know. Maybe it's not as big of a factor as I may make it out to be, but it is a fear that I have.
Yeah. and we are going to bring the man himself on, Mark Rogers. Mark, how we doing?
Doing well. What's going on, guys?
Not too much. So while we have you getting situated, so Dre, I'm going to pose this question to you first. I think we all understand Michigan is going to win this game. What are some things that you would like to see as they go into this game, right? Because we're not going to see a last second finish. We're not going to see any tough or difficult situations, most likely. So what are some things you're looking forward to seeing or that you'd like to see in the game this week?
Health. Guys, stay healthy. I mean, that's really it. I mean, like I look at these games like preseason games in the NFL. I think guys, and I want guys to stay healthy. Our main guys to stay healthy. Offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, receiver. We lost Ronnie Bell the first game of the year last year. So, off of punt return. So, I want guys to stay healthy and just get ready for the following week.
Okay. So, Mark, with being an Ohio State fan, I'm not sure there's anything that you really want to see, but when you have a matchup like this, what are some things that
I respect his honesty.
Well, let's remove Michigan from the equation, but in a game where you have just a juggernaut playing a team that's probably not going to be there. What are some things that that you'd ideally like to see, from the team that we're pretty sure gonna win the game?
This is my favorite channel, the Michigan channel. We're wanting this to make it to number one. So
we are.
I'm neutral on all this. So what I would like to see is I want to see who's going to rush the quarterback. Who's going to rush the quarterback from the defensive end / edge rusher positions, David Ajabo, Aiden Hutchinson, who's going to be not just filling those spots, but who's going to show that they can dominate and put consistent pressure on the quarterback for when the better teams show up. That's the first thing I'm looking for.
Okay. So my thing is, and I can kind of go back to a situation, and I'm pretty sure I text you, Dre, during this game, and there was a stretch of like a year and a half, like 18 months on the calendar where Michigan played Florida like 3 times in that stretch. It was really weird, but they were playing Florida in a bowl game, and I might get the year wrong, but say 28. I think it was 2018. But I'm watching the game. Michigan's playing, and they're I believe winning the game. But there was a guy who got the ball who I hadn't seen all season carry the ball. And he looked really explosive carrying the ball. And I thought to myself, I'm like, hold on. Like this wasn't an undefeated Michigan season. This was, I think they were 10-3 that season. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, this kid looks like he is potentially one of the most explosive guys on the field. And he hadn't touched the ball all season. And that young man was Christian Turner. And watching that game, it made me think, like, what happened all season where someone this athletic, this explosive could not touch the field at all. And my thought is, in this game, I'm looking for one of those guys, one of the guys where you look at it and you say, can I find a guy on the depth chart, whether it's running back, whether it's tight end, wide receiver, where he may not be able to handle the entire scheme. He doesn't know the entire playbook. Maybe he knows 1/5 of everything he needs to know. But we know that 1/5 that he does know, that he can be really effective in that role. And obviously you've got Blake Corum, you've got Donovan Edwards. Those guys are going to handle a huge part of the workload. But in football, it is what it is. There's going to come a time at some point in the season where one of those two guys, or maybe both of those guys, are ineffective for a stretch, and you just need an offensive spark. Can you find that guy in either this game or the next 2 weeks where you say, let's just give Christian Turner a carry. Let's see what happens. Maybe it's only a jet sweep. That's the only thing he knows. Cool. Let's put him in, run him out of jet sweep or inside zone, whatever the case may be. But can you find a guy like that on offense, or like Mark said, rushing the passer defensively, where, same thing on the flip side. He may not know the entire scheme on defense and every assignment, everything I'm supposed to do, but he knows on 3rd and long, go get the quarterback. Can you find that guy? Can you create depth when it comes to your team, even though it looks like we're probably going to have a blowout?
Yeah, I have one thing I don't want to see. I don't want to see any stupid hardball formations in special teams. Like when it comes down to when it comes time to kick a PAT, can we not do the stupid everybody in one line? At the very last minute, we go into the formation like nothing cute.
I'll
Can
give,
we not?
listen, in Harbaugh's defense, he hasn't done that in quite a while. He hasn't done that in a while.
I know. Please, like, let's not do that. Like it's getting cute. Oh, look at that. No, stop. Let's just be about our business. Let's do what we have to do. Let's not get guys hurt. And let's have fun. Let's have fun. That's what these games are about.
That clip gets played a lot of that formation that, all in a single line, and everybody just kind of goes. It's
I can't.
That's
stand
funny.
that, man.
That's funny that's what kind of triggered you.
I just don't want to see it. Like anytime I see that clip, I get irked so bad. Partly because I've seen that backfire versus Ohio State. I'm pretty sure. I think we scored. It was like we were down 14-7. We got to, I think we scored a touchdown. It was 14-13, and we tried to kick a PAT. He came out in that stupid formation, and we missed a PAT. I'm almost certain that happened in the Ohio State game. And it irked me so bad, but it's just like, just stop it. The only kind of creative things I want to see is play calling. So that's all I want to see, but other than that, let's just stop with the cute stuff. And also what I don't want to see is that I don't want to see 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of play calling. That's boring. I don't want to see us hand the football off 50 times. Okay. Now, at least in the first half. Let's try to have a little fun in the first half. Look, if Colorado State can't keep us under 40 points by halftime because we're having a balanced offense, then they don't deserve to have any kind of mercy. Okay, I'm just being honest. If we can't have a balanced offense, like, oh, we don't want to pass too much because it's too easy. Okay, well, I'm sorry. That's not my problem. Now, if it's towards the third quarter, fourth quarter, you want to take your foot off the gas pedal, I understand. But, let's not go in here and be like, let's just get in and get out. No, you let these kids start. Let's see what they can do.
All right. Is there anything that you don't want to see, Mark, outside of a Michigan win?
Well, I think in a game like this, I think for the team that's the dominant team, the much better team, what you don't want to see, besides injuries, of course, what you don't want to see are glaring weaknesses that couldn't necessarily be taken advantage of by this team, but they could show up later. So, for example, you don't want either one of your tackles maybe playing a legitimate frontline player that could play in a Power 5 on the other side. Colorado State, they had a tight end last year, NFL tight end. They will have a couple guys sprinkled in here and there that can play on the same field as Michigan players. They just don't have enough of them. They don't have nearly enough of them. But for those guys, let's say Colorado's got a rush end that's like that. I think if you're the Michigan fan that doesn't want to see what could be a weakness down the road, you don't want to see maybe one of your tackles look bad on a regular basis in this game and think, uh-oh, our tackles in pass protect aren't what they should be. After maybe your two top corners, when they're 4 wide, you don't want to see that, our third and fourth corners or our nickel corner got burned about 4 or 5 times, because that doesn't bode well for the future. Those kind of glaring things that Colorado State's not going to take advantage of. But you think, okay, wow, that's on tape. And unless we've got somebody else or got a scheme that can cover that up, that could be an issue.
I mean, like how Minnesota exposed, Ohio State's rush defense in the first game last year.
Jeez, oh, here we
I'm
go.
just saying, like that was evident right away. And then Oregon, the following week, definitely made that very apparent. Like this is going to be a problem. Hey, look, is that a converted running back playing linebacker? Yes, it is. Okay, just saying.
All right. Well, we are going to bring in Steve Helwick. He is joining us now. Steve, how is it going, my friend?
I'm doing excellent right now, and we're one day away from the start of week 1 after a fantastic week 0. I know we're talking about Michigan Big Ten here. We've already got to see 3 Big Ten teams on full display. I enjoyed that Nebraska Northwestern game immensely. I thought that was a fantastic football game to kick off the season, and really the only good game of week 0, considering the results of the other ones. So I'm excited for this week 1. I think it's an action-packed slate, and really looking forward to Penn State, Purdue, the backyard brawl, and a Central Michigan, Oklahoma State revisit tomorrow.
So in real time, watching Nebraska and Northwestern, what were your thoughts on the onside kick? Because that is the talk of the town.
Yes, I thought it was confusing at the time because at that point in the game, Northwestern's offense didn't really create much explosive plays, and they weren't getting down the field with ease before that. They did have that one drive where Helinski had a wide open receiver, their first touchdown of the game. But Nebraska seemed to be dominating to a point. And think about this. Nebraska would have been up 3 scores had they not been stripped near the goal line earlier in the game. Their offense was dominating to a point where you have to let the defense have a full possession. And the odds and probability of recovering that kick, they're not that high at that point. You use an onside kick like Sean Payton and the Saints used in Super Bowl 44 when the odds are a little stacked against you, you're trailing, and you need a spark for momentum. I don't think that's a safe call when you have an 11-point lead in that game. But I feel like we're giving Nebraska too much slander and Northwestern not enough credit for winning that game, because Northwestern did produce 500 yards of offense for, I think, only the second time since 2018, and they moved the ball down the field really well.
Yeah, I thought Ryan Helinski was really good, and I thought that, and it was interesting. They showed a trend, like the roller coaster trend that Northwestern has had. I think every odd year they were like 3-9, and they'll jump up to 8-4, 9-3. Either way, my point is that this is one of those years that they're due to have a good year, because they were bad last year. And no, I agree with you that Northwestern played very well. It was just that the reasoning for that onside kick was, hey, let's put our foot on the gas on their neck and try to take control of this game. They already had control. I mean, Northwestern was just reeling. If I'm not mistaken, the possession before that, I can't remember the running back's name. I think he wore number 4 from Northwestern. He had a good run, and then he got stripped. Not stripped, but it was a really good play by the safety for Nebraska. He put his helmet on the football, not the football loose. Nebraska gets the ball back, scores a touchdown. Like, Northwestern's demoralized, right? Nebraska has all the momentum. Why are you it was one of those situations where it's like, you know what? It went from maybe this is Scott Frost's year. He's relinquished offensive control. The offense looks really good. They finally have a quarterback in Casey Thompson. Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, saying Scott Frost, saying Nebraska. It was incredible.
Yeah, and I think, and Dre, we talked about this on the phone. I can live with you trying to, take that shot, because I think if you do get that onside kick, the game probably is over. I could be wrong, obviously, but so I understand that aspect of it. But for Scott, here's the tough part for me personally is when you, as a head coach of a Power 5 program, this is not your first year, not your first rodeo, to get up to the podium and say that our offensive staff has to be more creative and things of that nature, like to just isolate really any of your coaches, like that's not what you want to see as a fan base, for your head coach to kind of just throw guys under the bus, guys that they work for you, and the buck stops with you. So to make it seem as if they created this offensive game plan behind your back and you had no idea what was going on is just asinine to me. And I was floored that he said that. And I'm like, Scott, like, you know how this goes. Like, that's just, to me, a good rule of thumb is when things go poorly, kind of talk about yourself. When things go well, talk about others. That's with head coach and with quarterback. Those two spots need to be those spots where you kind of keep that in mind. You win 45-0. You know what? Man, my receivers, they did just a really good job catching the ball, making big plays. You know, O-line did a great job just opening up holes and holding up their blocks. They did a great job picking up the blitz. And when you lose, it's just, you know, I got to make better decisions when I'm out there, so on and so forth. I put it on Twitter, but I almost lost it. But I couldn't believe that after having that poor of a performance again, to just throw your offensive staff under the bus like that was wild to me.
It's a simple adjustment of, we are not creative enough on offense, and that's my responsibility, and we will work on that, or whatever. Yeah, it's one of the basic tenets of leadership that you deflect praise to the rest of your folks, as you just outlined, but you have to take responsibility. That guy is making nearly 10 times more money than anybody on his staff, probably 6 to 7 times more money
saving it up
than anybody else on the staff. So he's the guy.
You won't be the guy for long.
Nope, doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that was shocking to hear that from Scott Frost. So anywho, but we do have a Michigan game coming up this weekend. And Steve, did I see something correct? And maybe it was a different team, but did I see that Colorado State is going to be running the air raid, or was I? Okay, so I did see that correct. And I think you may have posted that, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, folks, if you don't follow Steve on Twitter, let me get your Twitter handle pulled up. Like the ultimate gems that you could ever expect and want. The gems that you didn't know you needed, Steve tweets them out. So, Steve, can you give us kind of just a rundown of Colorado State, and just let us know what we should be looking for and what we'll be looking at on Saturday?
Mm-hmm. Colorado State's one of the teams, just like USC, where you can throw away last year's results when analyzing this year's team, because that is how different of a look they are. Just like USC, they have a new coaching staff, and with a new coaching staff, you get an incoming horde of transfers, and that's exactly what they have. They have several, I think 5 Nevada transfers that are going to be on their projected starting offense. And their head coach, Jay Norvell, comes from Nevada, where they ran the air raid last year, and they're bringing over his offensive coordinator as well. So this team basically has a lot of what you saw with the Carson Strong, Romeo Dubs, Nevada teams from the past few years at Colorado State. So it's going to be a transformed unit from the one you saw last year that really struggled offensively, ranked 98th in scoring, and never really moved the ball too well. But Mark mentioned it earlier in the show. The biggest replacement Colorado State's going to have is Trey McBride, who is an NFL draft pick tight end currently with the Arizona Cardinals, won the John Mackey Award for the nation's best tight end last year. So there were areas of talent on that Colorado State team, as well as their defensive end, Scott Passion, who was a transfer from Miami. He's leaving now, so they're going to have to generate a pass rush too. But this Colorado State team, they have transfers at about half of their starting positions, just looking across the entire roster. So this is a team that's going to have to mold and fit into some new systems. And they have a new offensive coordinator who is Matt Mumme, who is the son of Hal Mumme, who invented the air raid offense. So you have a direct air raid lineage there, and they're going to run a lot of 4-out receivers. You have Torrey Horton and Melquan Stovall at the receiver positions. They were the secondary and tertiary wide receiver options last year for Nevada. Both had really good stat lines. So you're going to have them, and their quarterback's going to be Clay Millen, who was one of Nevada's backups last year. So an established connection between those few already, and several offensive linemen are from Nevada. So
Steve, is there a lineage there as well? Millen? Is that
No,
Hugh
it is
Millen's
not.
son?
No relation to Matt
I'll
Millen.
give it a shot. All right.
I mean, you gotta be careful throwing Matt Millen around from us from Lions fans, man.
No,
we
I
got
didn't throw out Matt.
We have
Hugh
PTSD
Millen,
from that
but
name, okay?
anyway.
Okay. It's very triggering. Very triggering. Oh,
yes.
boy. That was a tough time.
Draft
So,
another wide
Jay
receiver.
Norvell, is that son of Mike at Florida State or no relation?
No relation.
Wow. What are the odds of that? To be in coaching and have those last names and have no relation, that's interesting.
Yeah, Steve, from the sounds of it, maybe if this was week 3, I will be a little bit more intrigued with could Colorado State bring an element to this game that we're not really expecting or prepared for. Not that it would influence the result differently in my mind, but could it be a little bit different of a flow to the game? But having that much turnover on your roster and staff personnel, that can look very, very messy in your first game. Would you agree?
I would agree with that, and it's a shame for Colorado State that they don't get really a warm-up game. They have to face the reigning Big Ten champion, a team that made the college football playoff last year, instead of getting an FCS team, which they did lose to their FCS team pretty badly last year. But point aside, you want more of a warm-up game to get these guys together on the field. You've had fall camp together and you've had spring ball together, but I think it's a different element when you go out with your guys on a Saturday afternoon and have to play together, because you can't replicate those in-game experience in practice.
Yeah. I will say, as far as offenses, because if I'm not mistaken, and they may run a different variation, but the air raid in its truest form is a relatively easy offense to pick up, because number one, the pass protection is going to be either 5-man pro or 6-man pro. Like, that part's relatively easy. So from what I know, it's not a ton of concepts as far as learning on the the outside, the receivers, things of that nature, the quarterback. But someone had mentioned just basically holding the ball for going 3 and out, holding the ball for 30 seconds could be bad. Yeah, if it's and that's the difficult part with the air raid, is because you do throw the ball a lot. So if you're not having completions and the ball's hitting the ground, you're gonna have your defense right back out there pretty quickly, and that could be a very tough situation.
Especially if the offense is like running the football and like just dominating you at the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden your defense is bent over, gasping for air. That can get bad very, very quickly. So, think about the air raid. You can get yourself for some 3rd and longs very, very easy if you don't get those quick completions. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a Michael Crabtree or what's the guy? Oh my God, he broke the record for passing touchdowns in the season at Texas Tech. Can't think of his name. Harold?
Passing touchdowns?
Yeah, in the regular season.
Quarterback Harrell.
Only Zappy has the
Harrell, right?
record for touchdowns.
Graham
Yeah,
Harrell.
Zappy has the
Graham
record
Harrell.
for touchdowns now.
Well, but before then, it was Graham Harrell, wasn't it, at Texas Tech?
No, it's Joe
Regular
Burrow.
season?
Burrow, and then it might have been Harrell.
I just remember that.
Anyway,
Texas,
Graham, yeah, they've got a nice line of quarterbacks at Texas Tech. Absolutely.
yeah, but yeah, I just it should be interesting to see. The air raid offense against the Michigan defense. Maybe it'll be at least a good workout for the Michigan secondary and allow those guys. So, like you said, Mark, earlier, could we see potential, chinks in the armor in the Michigan secondary? You don't want to see the Colorado State receivers getting free and breaking some plays down the field, right? Because maybe not Colorado State doesn't have the personnel to really take advantage, but I definitely know Ohio State does. So, that could be one of those things that Michigan fans can can evaluate in this game how's the secondary do with a pass heavy offense.
Unless Colorado State has another couple, Rashard Higgins?
Colorado
Four
State.
NFL players at wide receiver. Their names are escaping me. The Cowboys receiver, the Browns receiver, and the
Michael
Lamb.
Gallup, Richard
Yeah.
Higgins. Colorado State's produced a lot of NFL talent at wide receivers lately, and those Nevada transfers could join that line. I mean, Richard Higgins, Olabisi Johnson plays for the was drafted by the Vikings. Michael Gallup played for the Cowboys. So yeah, they have produced a lot of talent at wide receiver lately, and I think that these two Nevada guys could really develop into that next crop.
Well, based on Colorado State running the air raid offense, Dre, I've got bad news for you. I would be willing to bet that Jim Harbaugh is going to run the ball quite a bit in that first half to kind of keep that offense off the field. Not that it would be super dangerous and it's going to score a bunch of points on Michigan, but just that potential of, you know, having your defense out there quite a bit. I think he's going to run the ball, kind of give the defense the plenty of time to rest, so you can just get your blood pressure ready now, because I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot of Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards in that first half.
Oh, I don't need anything for blood pressure. I need something like for alertness. You know, so I have to have a lot of coffee and stuff like that, so I don't get bored watching it. That's all.
How do you get bored watching your team? How does that happen? I don't get it.
I get
Especially
bored.
the first game of the season when you haven't seen them for 9 months.
It's
How
not
long
that- It's
Come
not
on.
my team. It's not about being my team. It's about the opponent. It's the opponent that makes it tough. Like, so I can deal with my team style of play if the opponent is quality, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I can, you know, I don't want the opponent so good that I'm sweating out of stress. But at the same time, where, you know, if we're just slicing and dicing up the field, you know, I also find that a little boring as well. So it's not
Great.
my team. It's the opponent.
Dre, this fact may wake you up. And Steve, this is actually an inside joke. Colorado State led Iowa at halftime last year. So I'm sure that's gonna scare you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you think that, you know, there's a bunch of things that, you know, Michigan has to do for Colorado State to win, like fumbling and, you know, making special team errors and misassignments and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I will say this. I love the Colorado State uniforms. The Rams, I think, is awesome. And Boulder, I've been to Boulder, Colorado. It's actually really nice.
Fort Collins.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Fort
Boulder
Collins.
is
I'm
CU.
sorry, Fort
Colorado.
Collins, excuse me. That's what I've
Now-
been to Fort Collins, yeah.
Speaking of Collins and Colorado State, I guarantee I am the only one here who has watched the only Michigan-Colorado State game in the series of the two schools.
In person?
No, have watched a Michigan-Colorado State game. There's only been one. It was the 1994 Holiday Bowl.
Yeah, I didn't watch that
Todd Collins, not Fort Collins, was the MVP of the game. Of course, he played for about 15 years in the NFL.
Yeah, former Giant quarterback, right? He played in
Yeah, Redskins.
Yeah, he was really good one year with the Redskins, filling in as the backup. I remember him there.
I think you might be thinking of Kerry Collins, Dre.
Kerry Collins.
Penn
sorry,
State.
thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, Kerry Collins. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Terry Collins made a lot more money.
very true. I think the last,
Went to a Super Bowl.
well, a throwback player I remember from Colorado State was their quarterback, Alex Van Pelt, who I think was
Ooh.
Aaron Rodgers' quarterbacks coach with Green Bay for a little bit. I may be wrong on that aspect, but I think he was a QB coach in the NFL for a couple years at least. He might still be around. I don't know.
When I think of Colorado State, I think about Steven Jackson. That's what I think about. You know.
He didn't go
He went to Oregon State.
Went to Oregon State.
He
Went
didn't
to
go to
Oregon
Colorado State.
In case any of our viewers are wondering, Dre is a huge college football history buff. Huge.
Yes.
Huge.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why for years I've always thought I don't know. You know
They don't
why?
have the same
You know,
colors.
I'm
None of
sorry.
I mean,
I'm sorry. You know what it is? You know what it is? I know what it is. It's Steven Jackson played for the Rams. Colorado State is the Rams. I'm sorry.
yeah.
it's a-
That's
No.
it.
Like it's a visual. There is a visual connection in my mind. It's because they have the same helmet, different color scheme, But
I
St.
will. I'll give
Charmaine.
you that. I will give
Okay,
you that.
that's what it is. That's what it is.
But
I'm
goodness
sorry.
gracious, I
Yes,
couldn't have
Oregon
been
State.
more off.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I know what my go-to joke's going to be to get under Dre's skin. It's going to be things like, "Oh yeah, Connor Cook." Yeah, when I think of Michigan quarterbacks, I think of Connor Cook.
No, hey, look,
No,
I'm gonna
Dre will probably
forget
just
that.
roll with it. Like, and he probably could have played better while he was here. It
I
probably
thought
could have
he
been
was
okay.
the way at least there is some kind of connection where it makes sense why I could have got confused. It could have been worse, right?
You stretched it, but you need a connection. Yeah.
Okay,
Sure,
I'm sorry.
sure.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm not extremely educated on former Colorado State players.
Perfect. So I've got a question for you, Steve.
Yes.
So for the Colorado State defense, right, when they're walking into their meeting room, who is the guy that they are circling on the scouting report? Like there's always the number one guy that you talk about. If we don't stop him, life is going to be very hard on Saturday. Who do you feel like Colorado State is circling as that guy for the Michigan offense?
Well, it has to be Blake Corum because last year Michigan didn't pass the ball more than 17 times in their first 4 games. They're going to run the ball, I think, early and often in this one. I know the QB situation that's going on where they're going to put McNamara out for week 1 and McCarthy for week 2. And I don't know how much they're going to get out of that, but they're going to run the ball a lot because that's a safe play here. Blake Corum's going to have a great first half, and then I think you're going to see Donovan Edwards probably get a bulk of the carries in the second half and then go further down the depth chart, just like you saw in that win over Northern Illinois last year. So I think it's definitely the running game that Colorado State has to be the most aware of to stop. But I will have to say, I think this Michigan receiving core is as good as we've seen in a long time, especially with Ronnie Bell returning. We only got a very small sample size of what we could see from Bell last year, and he looked really promising in that small sample size against Western Michigan. So when you add him to Cornelius Johnson, Roman Wilson, then Andrell Anthony, who played really well in that Michigan State game, I really like the makeup of this core, especially with a good tight end as a great support for them. So I do think that Michigan has a lot of talent, the skill position players this year, and I think Colorado State has a lot to be aware of.
Best Michigan receiving core since probably Plexico Burris or Earl
Nice try.
Okay, I'm done.
Happen. Yeah, that's not going to
That is incredible.
This is not going to go away anytime soon. Yeah.
No, it's not going anywhere. So, Steve, you mentioned quickly the quarterback's situation, and that has been the talk of our stream basically every stream. What are your thoughts on the method that Jim Harbaugh is using to decide on who his quarterback is going to be?
It's unique. I'll give it that. But you have to eventually decide on a starter. I really admire what Kirby Smart did at Georgia last year, where they were in a good rhythm under Stetson Bennett. And JT Daniels was the original starter there. But they didn't want to bring JT Daniels back in the starting lineup because they didn't want to buck any of the trends that they had going for them in their direction. So they decided on Stetson Bennett until he faced adversity, and Bennett really never had any issues. They just had one loss in the conference championship against Alabama, and then Bennett won the national championship. So I think it's better for your morale early on just to decide on a quarterback. And Michigan has a pretty weak non-conference schedule this year. You get UConn, Hawaii, Colorado State. No team in there finished with a winning record last year, and Hawaii might be one of the 5 worst teams in the country this season. So
they gave up 63 to Vandy.
Pretty weak, Steve.
Hey, UConn looked good.
Yeah, for a quarter.
Yeah, and look.
Concerns. Well, now that UConn, we got to circle that game now. That'll be a big deal.
You know the schedules. Doesn't Michigan and UCLA, aren't they in a battle for the worst non-conference schedule between those two?
Does UCLA have Bowling Green?
They've got like Bowling Green, Alabama State.
Oh, and South Alabama. Oh, yeah, that's pretty bad. Hey, Bowling Green beat Minnesota last year, so
but you know what?
Defense returning.
And granted, I know your scheduling is done in advance, but at least it's not like UCLA is like the defending Pac-12 champions and stuff like that. You know, it's just like it's the season that Michigan had, and it's like that's how they start the season. You know, it's just
But
whatever.
see, I would, in kind of the same light that I mentioned with Michigan. I mean, UCLA, I just pulled up their schedule, and yes, the out of conference is abysmal. But they got to play Utah, they've got Oregon, they got USC on the schedule. So and those are three ranked teams as of now. But I mean, it's not as if they're not going to be tested. They're going to play some teams that they're pretty clearly going to be underdogs in. So they've got some tough games coming down the pipeline. So we'll know who they are by the end of the season, as we do with just about everybody.
Desmond, you can combine the three opponents between UConn, Colorado State, Hawaii, and South Alabama, Alabama State, and Bowling Green. You combine the best players of all 6 of those teams, and they still will be 20-point underdogs to Michigan.
Well, what if Colorado State got to bring Steven Jackson back and him in his prime play for them?
You know,
I mean, that would probably change things a little bit.
That would be an issue if somehow Steven Jackson played for Colorado State. I don't know who suggested that, but
it's so wild because Steven Jackson was such a good running back.
Yeah,
he was really good.
He's a beast.
And on top of that, if they got to play a home game in Boulder against Michigan, then they'd really.
You know, I should have stopped when I was ahead. When I said Boulder as opposed to Fort Collins, that should have been like a precursor that I was about to be very wrong with my take. So I can eat that one. Go ahead.
You're driving Steve nuts. He's just like, oh my goodness.
I can't even think of who the quarterback of that super team would be. I can't pick a guy. I think I'd go Matt McDonald of Bowling Green.
Yes, you're the guy to do it, Dave. You tell us.
I was going to say Joel Klatt. I mean, he
I mean, you have Zion Turner with UConn. You have
Dan Orlovsky,
Bradley at South Alabama. I don't know. That super team, you're right. Michigan would probably run through that super team, but that super team's defense would just be the Bowling Green defense, basically.
Klatt was a Colorado guy.
I know. I was joking and Raz and Dre.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. It's all right. Hey, look, man. Something you can't some days, man. You have days where you can be off. You know, I can't have a wealth of knowledge in here, but sometimes things get mixed up a little bit. So,
well, I think what's happening is our viewers, Steve and Mark, are now getting a view of what it's like when we would work together and sit right next to each other. Things like that would come out of Dre's mouth on a regular basis. So he would get teased by our coworkers in a fun way on a regular basis because things like that he would say. So it worked out well for us, I guess.
Being the expense of somebody else's joke, the butt of somebody else's jokes tends to work out pretty well, but it's okay. I can take it. We'll see what the joke is Saturday night when the Buckeyes play the Fighting Irish. We'll see what the joke is that night. I can't wait. Steve, what do you think? What is your thoughts on that game?
Ohio State has who I think is the best quarterback and the best wide receiver in the country this year. They have a top 3 running back. They're as loaded as a team offensively going into a season as I've seen in a while. And you also have other good wide receiver talent in that room, such as Marvin Harrison Jr., who had a really good Rose Bowl outing. And then I like some of the makeup of the defense, returning guys like Steel Chambers in there. I think Ohio State is going to rout Notre Dame, and I think the spread, which is about 15.5, is about what I expect for that game. So the Buckeyes are going to be
17.5.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it moved. It moved.
Crazy.
The Buckeyes are going to be pretty sensational this year, and that's a team that I definitely have my eye on. I know they did have that blemish against Oregon last year in non-conference play, which was a bit of a surprise, but I really think that this team is going to roll through the Big Ten this season.
You think you're giving Dre hives by saying that, Steve?
I mean, look, we all know it, and it's funny, throwing Ohio State barbs and jabs, it just triggers our chat, man. I've been looking at our chat this whole time, and ever since I made the little comment 30 minutes ago about what Minnesota did to Ohio State's defense, that just triggered everything.
You set it off. You set the chat off. Yeah, Dre is here for the people. He is absolutely here for the people.
No, we all know how stacked Ohio State is. I mean, the biggest, question in terms of how it pertains to Michigan and how I see that matchup going this year is I believe that as of now, Michigan definitely has all it takes offensively to compete with Ohio State's offense. They're not as good, no way, but they can compete. The question is going to be the Ohio State defense. You know, will they be able to fix the issues that they had last year, and you know, and not be as vulnerable, especially for two things: their intensity and focus in terms of their physicality, and also like just gap assignment, tackling, just pretty much everything that went wrong in their rush defense last year. And Michigan was able to take advantage of that, because when we get down to November, late November, the last Saturday in November, and we play that game, you know, part of the way you can neutralize that explosive offense is keeping them off the field, right? So that's really something I'm going to be watching, and I think a lot of Michigan fans should be paying attention closely this Saturday night when Notre Dame plays Ohio State. How focused is Ohio State? Do they seem like they are different defensively? Those are things that, quite frankly, is very relevant to Michigan, because we all know as long as Michigan takes care of their business, which they should, based on how their schedule is looking, that we're on a collision course once again to get back to Indy.
It'll be exciting. Steve, any game in particular this weekend, which I think we have games until Sunday, which one are you going to be absolutely dialed into, can't miss, got to stick with it? What game are you most looking forward to?
I'm going to throw out 3 rapid-fire matchups that I think are evenly matched. Yes, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Oregon, Georgia are your highly ranked matchups. But look at the spreads on those. Both of those are 3-score spreads. So let's go with some of the more evenly matched up games I'm looking forward to this weekend. Penn State, Purdue, Thursday night. Purdue, coming off a 9-4 season, beat the likes of Iowa, Michigan State, and had a really thrilling Music City Bowl win over Tennessee. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Aiden O'Connell and that offense can do against the Penn State defense, which was pretty stout last year, and also see if Penn State can have any improvement on offense. They had kind of a bit of a funk in the second half of the season with Sean Clifford running the show, and he'll have to operate without Jahan Dotson this year as receiver. So I'm excited to see how Penn State offense looks this year, especially after the loss of Dotson, and seeing if they can rebuild from that. On Saturday, I'm looking forward to Arkansas, Cincinnati. Cincinnati had 9 NFL draft picks. Only Georgia and LSU had more. So Cincinnati really has to replace a ton, including their starting quarterback, Desmond Ridder, as well as their talented corner duo in Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. Arkansas brings a lot to the table with a really high-powered rushing game. They have their quarterback, KJ Jefferson, returning, and they have really good talent on defense and Bumper Pool and Jalen Catalon. I think that's going to be an evenly matched game in Fayetteville, one that I have my eyes turned to. And the other game, which might not be on some of your radar, and I think it should be, is Houston versus UTSA at the Alamo Dome. UTSA has gotten so much more hype recently in the last year. The Alamo Dome's getting some of its highest attendance numbers. It's going to be loud in there. And you have 2 Texas-based teams playing in a non-conference battle. Both went 12-2 last year. One won the CUSA. The other one finished number 17 and appeared in the AAC Championship and beat Auburn in the Birmingham Bowl. So you have 2 great Texas teams with a lot of returning talent playing in non-conference there. And I think that game, it deserves a better platform than CBS Sports Network.
Nice. I definitely have my eyes on that Arkansas-Cincy game to see what exactly happens. Does Cincy bounce back, like you mentioned, and to see if KJ Jefferson kind of takes that next step, because he's pretty dynamic. He's a really good quarterback and had a really good season for them last year.
Reminds me of Dante Culpepper.
Ooh, that's actually a really good comparison. Really good one.
They're both like 6'4", 250-pound quarterbacks and really mobile and have a big arm.
Yeah, that's very true. Dre, what games are sticking out to you this weekend that you're going to be tuned into, can't miss?
Well, from my alma mater is Central Michigan University, so I'm looking forward to playing Oklahoma State and potentially shocking. It probably won't happen, but upsetting them again. So I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow night, I'm looking forward to seeing Pittsburgh versus West Virginia. Excuse me. JT Daniels starting for West Virginia, so I'd like to see how he does with the Mountaineers. And also, like I said, Saturday, I'm looking forward to, of course, Notre Dame and Ohio State. Those are my main 3 for sure.
Weren't JT Daniels and Keaton Slovis both at USC at one point?
2019, JT Daniels got hurt to start the season, and Slovis took over.
Wow, that's unique. I wonder
The
how
transfer
often that has
portal,
happened.
gentlemen. The transfer portal,
Yeah.
gentlemen, has changed everything. You see so much. A local radio show that I listen to here. They did a college football shuffle in which they basically were trying to see, do you know where this player is playing now? And it was really hard for some of the people to do it because the transfer portal guys are changing schools so much now. Like it's like, wait a minute, I thought he plays there now, especially the quarterback position. So what is this, JT Daniels' third school now?
Yes.
So I mean, it's how often does that happen, right? So for a name, there may be some kids you never heard of before, but that for a name like JT Daniels, you just don't really see that very often.
I
Yeah.
appreciate the Central Michigan Oklahoma State shout out. I just wrote a story on the 2016 game, an in-depth retrospective one, and that's one of the wildest endings in college football history with the untimed down and Hail Mary hook and ladder to end the game. So that's definitely an interesting one. I bet Mike Gundy has that one circled on his calendar.
Oh, he was upset. I never get that. I'm like, well, hey, have better prevent defense is all I got to say. You got to. And because was it, if I'm not mistaken, they did a delay of game. Was a delay of game call, correct?
No, here's what happened. It was 4th down for Oklahoma State. There were 4 seconds left, and they just gather in a tight formation around Mason Rudolph, nobody out wide, and Rudolph just launches the ball down the sideline, no receiver in the area. They call intentional grounding, which you can call there. It's very rarely called there, but they called it. Except the incorrect part that they did was they gave Central Michigan an untimed down when the game is allowed to end on an offensive penalty. I think you've seen, I remember the Baltimore Ravens doing it before. I remember TCU doing it before, ending the game just on a play where everyone just holds for a long time, commits holding penalties. Yeah, you can end on an offensive penalty. But they incorrectly rewarded Central Michigan an untimed down, and Cooper Rush launched it to Jesse Crawl. Crawl laterals it to Corey Willis, and Willis beats Oklahoma State cornerback Ashton Lampkin in a foot race to the end zone, and they win that game.
It was awesome. It was awesome. I to this day, it was one of the, you don't, especially if you're a student of a smaller school like Central Michigan, you don't expect those type of upsets. Now, granted, Central Michigan's actually had a pretty good amount of upsets the last 20 years. I mean, we go into Iowa and beat the Hawkeyes at Kinnick. We've beaten MSU at Spartan Stadium. So we've had a couple good upsets, but that was definitely like one of the biggest upsets in college football over the last, I think, 10 years. Not the biggest, but one of them for sure. And definitely looking forward to seeing that rematch Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting weekend. I'm really excited, and the Sunday slate adding some games too is really nice. So everybody, wanted to ask you all to give us a thumbs up on the way out. Steve, thank you so much, man, for joining us. Definitely appreciate you joining us, your insight, your knowledge. As I mentioned, everybody, follow Steve on Twitter because I do, and it is an absolute joy. It's awesome, man. The knowledge you have is it's pretty awesome. So, and Dre, as always, appreciate you, my friend. We will be here Saturday after Michigan wraps up, and or if the game is getting out of hand, later in the game, we might start up a little bit early, but we will be here on Saturday after Michigan. And I believe Mark has a call-in show tonight, I believe at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. My friend Dre, good to see you as always. Steve, thanks again for joining us. That is it for us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.